You know that sinking feeling when you're standing next to someone and you know you should say something, but your brain completely shuts down? You default to, "How's your day?" They give you a one-word answer, and you both stand there in painful silence, wishing you were anywhere else. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone, but you're also doing small talk completely wrong. Here's what this video is about. I'm going to show you why that awkward silence happens, reveal the psychology behind what confident people do differently, and by the very end, give you a simple 3-word phrase that can turn any dead conversation into an engaging one. But here's the thing. Most people think they're bad at small talk because they don't have interesting things to say. That's not the problem. Most people think small talk is about having interesting things to say. Wrong. They think it's about being charming or witty. Also wrong. The real secret isn't about what you say at all. It's about what you notice. However, there's a specific way to turn what you notice into conversation gold, and that's what most people completely mess up. Let me paint you a picture. You're at a networking event, coffee shop, or party. Someone's standing near you and you know you should say something, but your brain goes blank. So you default to "How's your day?" or "What do you do?" The conversational equivalent of plain toast. The other person gives you a one-word answer. You both stand there awkwardly and you think, "I'm terrible at this." But here's what's actually happening. You're treating the other person like a computer that needs the right input command. You're not connecting with a human being. You're trying to execute a social program. The confident people around you aren't using magic. They're not naturally charismatic. They're doing something completely different that you can learn in the next few minutes. However, before I show you what they're doing, you need to understand why your current approach fails so spectacularly. When you ask generic questions, you're putting pressure on the other person to perform. They have to think of an interesting answer, worry about how they sound, and essentially carry the conversation for you. It's exhausting for them, which is why they shut down. But then I discovered something fascinating. Watch what happens when you shift from asking questions to making observations. Instead of, "What are you reading?" you say, "That book looks like it survived a few coffee spills." Instead of, "How's work?" you say, "You have the look of someone who just survived a Monday morning meeting." This works because you're removing pressure and adding curiosity. You're not demanding they explain themselves. You're simply noticing something and sharing that observation. Therefore, they can engage or not, without feeling like they're being interviewed. But here's where most people still mess this up. They make boring observations. "Nice weather today." "That's a cool shirt." These are observations technically, but they're conversation killers because they don't invite engagement. The difference between a conversation starter and a conversation killer comes down to 3 specific elements that I'm about to show you. However, before we get there, let me ask you something. If this is helping you see small talk differently, hit that like button and subscribe because I break down social psychology like this every week. Also, drop a comment and tell me your worst small talk experience. I read every single comment. The 3 elements of magnetic observations are specificity, slight exaggeration, and implied story. Let me break these down. Specificity means you're noticing details others miss. Not nice shoes, but those shoes look like they could survive a zombie apocalypse. You're being precise about what caught your attention. Slight exaggeration adds energy and humor without being over the top. Instead of "You look tired," try "You have the expression of someone who just discovered their coffee was decaf." It's dramatic enough to be interesting, but relatable enough to feel genuine. Implied story means your observation hints at something bigger. "That laptop has seen some adventures," suggests there's a story behind all those stickers. You're creating curiosity about their experience without directly asking for it. But then something interesting happens when you combine all 3. Your observations become conversation magnets because you're not just commenting, you're painting a picture that the other person wants to either confirm or correct. Therefore, they naturally start sharing without feeling pressured. However, here's where it gets really powerful. You can layer these observations to create conversation threads that people actually want to follow. Instead of one comment and done, you're building a dialogue. For example, you notice someone at a bookstore holding 3 completely different genres. Your observation: that's either the most eclectic reading list ever, Or you're shopping for 3 very different people. They laugh and explain they're getting books for family members. But then you follow up with, "That's either really thoughtful or you're trying to win favorite family member status." Now you're not just making small talk, you're creating a playful dynamic. The key is reading their energy and adjusting accordingly. If they seem rushed, keep it brief. If they're engaging, you can build on the conversation. Therefore, you're not forcing anything, you're responding to what they're giving you. This works in professional settings too. Instead of, "How's the project going?" try, "You have the focused look of someone either solving a puzzle or planning someone's demise." It's professional enough for the workplace, but interesting enough to break the monotony. The beauty is that once you start thinking this way, you'll notice conversation opportunities everywhere. However, there's one specific phrase that ties all of this together. The 3-word conversation starter I promised you at the beginning. The 3-word phrase, 7 to 8. But then you need to understand how to deploy this phrase correctly because context is everything. The 3 words are, "I bet that." "I bet that coffee has saved your morning." "I bet that book choice has a story." "I bet that presentation didn't go as planned." This phrase is magical because it does 3 things simultaneously. First, it makes an observation about their experience. Second, it shows you're paying attention to them as an individual. Third, it creates a natural opening for them to share without feeling interrogated. However, the real power isn't in the phrase itself. It's in how it forces you to actually observe and engage with the person in front of you. When you start sentences with "I bet that," your brain automatically looks for something specific and interesting to complete the thought. Therefore, you stop defaulting to generic questions and start making genuine connections based on what you actually notice about someone. The phrase becomes a bridge between observation and conversation. But here's the secret that changes everything. The goal isn't to become a small talk expert. The goal is to become someone who makes others feel seen and interesting. When you master this approach, small talk transforms from something you endure into something you actually enjoy. The next time you're in a situation where conversation feels forced, remember this. You don't need to be interesting. You need to be interested. Look for one specific detail, add a touch of playful exaggeration, imply there's more to the story, and start with, "I bet that." The conversation will unfold naturally from there. Thanks for watching, and until next time.